Today we're going to tie one of the most simple and effective bonefish flies ever made. This is my variation of the Enrico Puglisi EP spawning shrimp. The shrimp will be tied on a Mustad Titan X Nico hook. This hook is simply the best hook for this fly because it's got a real wide gap, it's got a non-shiny finish, it's ultra sharp and ultra strong. I'm tying on a number 4 or a number 6 with this fly. Today I'll be using a number 4. This hook is very good. It's sharp, it is strong, it doesn't have a reflective finish, and it just seems to be the best, stinger style hook that I've used for tying shrimp flies. The second thing we'll be using are some small Puglisi eyes. These are eyes that I pretty much glued together. We have some Puglisi rubber legs, brass eyes, some shrimp dub brush from Puglisi, some regular EP fibers, and of course we have shrimp dub brush. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the Nico hook and we're going to clamp it on the vise. Once you're there, you build a thread base. When I build this thread base, I'll build it all the way a little bit past the bend of the hook. And that's where I'm going to tie a lot of my materials into. You want to tie them as far back in the hook as possible. And with this vise, I can turn things around and kind of look and see. You want to tie the materials as far back as possible, but you don't want to tie the materials so far back where it's going to impede on your hook gap. And the good thing about this hook is that it's got a big gap, so you can tie your material really far back in this hook. We're going to firstly take our crustaceous rubber legs. We're going to pluck out 2 strands of these rubber legs. First thing I'll do is tie in the rubber legs. So like so. I'll tie in 2 rubber legs in the very back of the hook, all the way to the hook starts to bend. And trim the excess. And next thing I'll do is I'll take, this is the EP Foxy brush. This is the 3-inch Foxy brush. So instead of using craft fur or whatever for a horn, what I like to do, because this already has a built-in nice taper with fibers, it's got fox fur on it, and it's got flash built into it already. So I'll just cut off a little bit. I'll bend the wire and manipulate it where I can get a good snip of the materials. So now you have, if you roll your materials out, you have just a nice tuft of like a craft fur type of material on here. So you trim it, and there you go. It's very buggy. It's got these little black tips on the guard hairs, and what I'll end up doing is I'll trim it clean, and I'll tie it toward the very back of the hook, like so. Tie it right up against the bend, right up against where your silly legs are. So next thing I'll do, this is optional, is I'll take these barred silly legs that have little blue tips on them, and I'll cut them where I have 2 pieces of little blue tips. And I'll tie those in right after the spot where I tied in that tail or horn of the shrimp. And after that, trim it very short. So all you have are just two little hints of blue here. It just adds a little bit of color, a little bit more profile to this fly. So you turn your fly over, The next step you're going to do is you're going to tie in your eyes. So I glue these eyes together so it's a little bit easier. You can use a size small or you can use a size extra small. This happens to be a size small. So build your thread base toward the front of the hook and all the way back again. Now you take your eyes and you slide them toward the very back and you measure it. Okay, so here's the right spot. So now you just tie the stem in. You tie these stems into this fly right at the bend. You don't want to go far up the bend. A common mistake I've seen and in real life have witnessed is, sometimes you see these shrimp flies and the eyes are tied way up the hook bend. And on a recent trip to the Bahamas, every single bonefish we've hooked, when those eyes were tied way up this hook bend, came off the hook. So it's a common mistake I try to avoid. So I tie them pretty much where the hook starts to bend. Here's a good look at what I've done. Spread the eyes out a little bit. There you go. When I tie these eyes in, I tie them on the bend side of the hook. It's personal preference. Next thing I'll take the EP shrimp dub brush in orange, and adding a little bit of orange to a fly, particularly to a bonefish fly, it's deadly. So I'll just take a little tuft of this shrimp dub brush and I'll tie it in front of where I tied the eyes, right up that bend as well. Make about 4 or 5 wraps on one side and then bring the other side back in, and this is known as a V-tie. So you basically V-tie this, but bring them close together. It's a very tight V-tie. And you have a little tufted orange. Next thing you do is you trim it real close. Trim it real short so you have just a little bit of orange back there. It's not overdoing it, it's not too bright, it's just enough orange to really grab the fish's attention. Traditionally from here on out, people would wrap a little bit of ice chenille or something like that on the shank. What I like to do is I like to actually take a little bit of this EP fiber instead. And when I take this EP fiber, what I do with it is I'll actually V-tie it onto the hook, a little further up this hook. So I'll V-tie this. So instead of palmering material or wrapping material behind here, what I'm doing is I'm basically V-tying this material on here. And there's only material on top. So I'll tie that, trim close. Same thing, repeat. V-tie another tuft on here. I do about 3. And what this does is it actually acts like a planer. Rather than just have material that's wrapped on the hook, you have this material that's actually organized, stacked on top of the fly, and it acts a little bit like a planer on the fly, also adds body to it. So now that you have there, you have your material there, what you do is just kind of trim it close. Same thing, you trim it real close, all the way up to the eyes. So now you have a little bit of body up here on this fly. Next thing I'll do is I'll wrap back and tie in the eyes. So we're using medium brass eyes on this fly, so it gives it a little bit better sink rate. I'll tie in the eyes. Just figure 8 the eyes in. And wrap back forward. So at this point, try to wrap over to the middle of the hook. And from the middle of the hook, you're going to tie in this EP shrimp dub brush. And then make your wraps back toward the eye of the hook. The next thing you do is just take your shrimp dub brush and palmer it on here. They don't have to be tight wraps, just kind of a little bit loose. Give them a little bit of space in between. You don't want too much material on here. You want just enough material so that there's a little bit of bulk on the fly. So I make about maybe 5 or 6 wraps on here. This material, and as I palmer this material on there, I'm brushing it back toward the back of the hook, just to make sure we have enough material on this hook. All right, once we get to the eyes, so you tie it off. Clip the excess. Make sure everything is tied in. And bring your thread to the front of the eye of the hook. And now you're going to tie in your weed guard. I like to use 16-pound hard mason for my weed guard. So I'll trim a piece of the 16-pound hard mason. Double it up and pinch it. Pinch it like a V. So now you have like a little V. What you do is you take it, put it on the underside of the hook, and just wrap over it. Put a few good wraps on there, and then take it, pinch it backwards, and put some base wraps on the back side of it, like so, and just manipulate this V until you get the right shape you want. You kind of spread it out, pull them apart, push them backwards, and just line them up with the point of the hook and trim. Next thing you do is just whip finish your fly. You notice I left a little bit of length on the rubber legs here. I'll trim them to my desired length. You don't need them too long, so trim them up there. I put a little dab of glue on here. And there you have it. Just a variant of an EP spawning shrimp.